So today on the program, we're continuing our conversation on the upcoming World Economic Forum Africa meeting, which is holding in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, next month. And as we know, we're going to have a lot of global players, global leaders, captains of industry and industrialists, as well as members of civil organizations being at that meeting. This year's theme is on forging inclusive growth and creating jobs. And so today on the program, we're looking at one of the topics that is going to drive some of the sessions at that meeting, and it's going to be focused on education. And so to talk about this, I'm going to be joined on the program now by two gentlemen. Emeka Izuorah is to my far left. He's the Vice Chairman, Proudly-Nigerian Project, and Uchenna Achunine, he is the Executive Director, Center for Values Leadership. Good morning, gentlemen, and thank you for coming in this morning. Let's just start with what we already know. Before I started this conversation, I talked about the fact that education has been identified as an important factor in reshaping and developing the world. Looking at Nigeria's philosophy for education, is it still valid? Does it still fit the purpose for what we're looking at education as an important factor in reshaping and developing the world? Uchenna, you want to start?
Thank you very much. Education as an important tool for changing a person, changing family, changing society and the nation. It doesn't change. It's a universal thing, whether it is Nigeria or US or UK, anywhere. So for our country, as long as we are on this planet Earth, education is an important tool. But the question now is whether our own education is playing that key role that it's supposed to play in developing a society. And I want to say no, that it is not, because there are so many statistics and things showing us that our education sector is in serious crisis, is abysmally dysfunctional, is morally bankrupt, and is not churning out the kind of people that it should produce in a society. So for me, I don't mince words to say that our education sector is not playing that key role it's supposed to play as something that is very core and very important for human development and national development.
You identify the fact that the system is dysfunctional and bankrupt. When did we start to get that wrong? At what point in our history as a nation did our education system begin to miss the purpose for which it was put together for? At what stage did we totally lose it?
Okay, I want to say that at the stage where we started noticing erosion of values in our society, in the late 70s and early 80s, where every attention was now focused on oil, people do no longer think about how they can be producers. Somebody talked about education, the right people should produce. He used the Esau and Jacob analysis in the Bible for that. He called Esau a hunter, Jacob a producer. And he said that our education system should churn out producers and not hunters. People who will have vision, who will dream, who will work, not people who will ravage to hunt and to destroy. Now, when every attention was shifted from we developing our skills and ourselves and seeing how much we can produce to move the nation forward, and every attention was shifted to oil, every attention was shifted to politics, every attention was shifted to how to go to Abuja to share money. That was at the time we got it wrong.
Okay. Emeka, please comment on this, if you will. He mentioned the fact that when looking at education, a lot of people have used the Bible concept of Esau and Jacob, the hunter and the producer. Now, we have a lot of hunters. We have less of producers.
That's right.
And it's not because that there haven't been initiatives since independence to ensure that the education system is well conceptualized. But has the system actually followed that concept that was actually put forward? Remember that we've had various initiatives, the 9334, 6334, and the rest of it, to try to ensure that the system gives and takes as much as possible to make us competitive on a global scale. But looking at the way we are right now, we have more hunters than producers. Where did it go wrong? At what point? Because you already mentioned the fact that, because of the oil boom and the rest of it, a lot of people began to have a different thinking as regards what education should really be like. So now that we know what this issue is, how can it begin to be addressed?
Okay, I would like to subscribe to the fact that what also started eroding the educational system is when we started placing emphasis on certificates. Emphasis on just getting the certificate, even people going as far as forging certificates because they believe that's what qualifies you to get to certain levels in life or in some placements in government offices. But having said that, I also want to believe that our policy makers, those who formulate educational policies, I wouldn't want to say they haven't done anything in that area, but it hasn't been followed because I also want to believe that to produce people who can produce and not just people who can take, they need to acquire certain skills. So what we emphasize on just teaching, learning, and no skills. You will see a graduate in certain field, give him a small assignment, he doesn't even know what it means. So we started placing more emphasis on getting the knowledge. We play down the skills. But we forget that one gives the other context. Knowledge gives skills context. So if we had a balanced policy that will produce people who have knowledge and then who have skill sets in certain areas of their specialization, then we will have people who are employable and then people who can take certain elements of job in their offices.
So why do we have that skills gap? Remember once upon a time, I don't know how many of them are still here. We've talked about this on this program before. Technical and vocational schools. Right. How many of them do we even still have that are actually functioning right now?
Well, I know in physical structures they exist, but what they do there, I'm not sure, still fits into the initial ideas of setting them up. We still have the technical colleges. We still have the polytechnics. I also want to believe that why they set up polytechnics was to produce graduates who have technical knowledge and technical skills to do certain aspects of job. But I don't want to believe, because of the emphasis that I said before, people just want to get this certificate. Some people even have exams taken for them, for professional examinations. So they just want to have the certificate. So I want to believe is the implementation at the level where we do not have proper implementation, where people who are given jobs to do are not interested in doing it. At that point, we started having these challenges.
Okay, let's look at what happened very recently. Last month, the Nigeria Economic Summit Group actually organized its 20th summit, and it focused on education. Now, what they were talking about, what the theme actually sought to look at was how education system can be revamped. You've mentioned the fact that there's a dearth in skills. Right. So a lot of graduates that we have coming out do not have the requisite skills to fit into whatever employment market that they're coming into. So it's almost like you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole.
That's right.
Now, how can revamping the system take on a more broader dimension? Because so many things were actually discussed. But let's look at the fact that they actually looked at the fact that private sector should actually now come into helping to revamp the system. How can this be done?
The only way I feel that can be done, like most organizations are doing, is setting up vocational centers. And what these centers do, they take specific skill areas. Like I know of a vocational center, what they do is underwater engineering. And they produce skilled labor for the oil industry. So what I think should, because to take away and to revamp the whole system is a big idea, and I don't see how they can do that in a very short while. But what we will do presently, because what we have is just people who have been to school, but they cannot help you achieve any purpose. So what I think we could do is, if more participants, and saying participants is not government, because they may not have the necessary whatever it is to have these vocational centers function. If private people or organizations that are not government would come together, because the way these vocational centers are is that they are well equipped to produce, of course, skill acquisition and on-hands training. If organizations will come together and set these vocational centers and then make it open to graduates, of course, it must be graduates who have acquired knowledge without skills. Then in certain areas, they will be trained to acquire skills, not just being employable, but also producing employment.